All of the workers here are volunteers. No one here is getting paid. They all just love the history and just want to carry on the tradition of running the railroad and just so knowledgeable. My town is your town, so let's explore together.
The railroad was, again, founded in 1884, built and completed in 1885, and the railroad still operates under its original charter. The company itself has never been like bought, sold, or traded or anything of that nature. It's always remained the same company. So the company is owned by a series of shareholders, and they elect a board of directors to make the executive decisions for the railroad. So while we're not the oldest railroad in York County, we are the oldest company that's a railroad in York County, because places like, you know, the Northern Central or the Maryland and Pennsylvania over in Muddy Creek Forks, while the rails there were laid earlier than Stewartstown, they're not the original companies that are operating them now, whereas Stewartstown is the original company. And it's pretty unique too, because the Stewartstown Railroad, when it was originally built, was 7.4 miles in length, and we still have those 7.4 miles. At one point, in 1905, they began building from here to Fawn Grove, and that was the New Park and Fawn Grove Railroad. When it was completed in 1906, was its own other separate railroad, and that was also less than 10 miles in length. But at some point, the Stewartstown Railroad merged into, well, I should say the New Park and Fawn Grove merged into the Stewartstown Railroad. So the Stewartstown Railroad was operating close to 20 miles of track, starting in New Freedom and ending in Fawn Grove. Now that section of track from Stewartstown to Fawn Grove was not, it didn't have the same level of freight and goods being shipped over it, so it didn't make sense for the railroad to continue operating it, so that was abandoned in the mid-1930s. But there are still places along Route 24. If you take Route 24 from Stewartstown to Fawn Grove, you can still see a lot of the earth rail bed where you can see where the train went. And so our station here, it's from 1914. It's technically the third station in Stewartstown, which is funny for such a small town as Stewartstown is, that at one point, you know, they switched stations a lot. So when the railroad was built in the 1880s, there wasn't a permanent station structure. If you wanted to buy a ticket to ride the train, you would go to the Fulton Hotel, because Fulton was the first president of the railroad, so if you wanted to ride his railroad, you would just go to his hotel, go to the front desk and buy a ticket. And actually that hotel, it's not a hotel anymore, it's still standing on the corner of East Pennsylvania and Main Street, so that building is still there. The second train station was built over where Gordon's Body Shop is today. That was built in 1898. That served until 1914 as the primary train station in Stewartstown. Very similar in design to this building. The construction materials were different. That one was you know, it had wood siding instead of brick like this building has. Really, there was nothing wrong with that building other than after the New Park and Fawn Grove Railroad extended from Stewartstown to Fawn Grove, when their trains would come into Stewartstown, they would be delayed because of the way that the tracks were set up to get to that train station. So the New Park and Fawn Grove petitioned for the Stewartstown Railroad to build a new train station where we're standing now that would better serve both railroads. Initially, the Stewartstown Railroad told them to pound sand. There was a legal battle. It actually went to court, and there was no clear winner, but the Stewartstown Railroad did build this station in 1914, and it opened on December 30th of that year. And so that's another unique thing about this train station here, is it was actually at one point a junction station between two railroads less than 10 miles in length, because you had the Stewartstown, which was 7.4 miles, and then the New Park and Fawn Grove, I think, was approximately 9.
And this was operating, I mean, this line used to carry what exactly when it was in operation?
So when it started, it was mostly farm goods, sewing factory that's now the retirement home over there.
Gotcha.
That was, as far as I'm aware, that was a source of goods that were being shipped along here. Most of the building's not there anymore, but the Stewartstown Furniture Factory was also, a lot of stuff was shipped over the railroad. In fact, the story that I've heard is that they would actually send a boxcar load of Stewartstown furniture to New York for the Macy's Day Parade to be
oh, no way.
yeah, to be exhibited at the Macy's store in New York.
That's a neat piece of history.
But the railroad primarily was built for the farmers of the area. In many cases, it's called the Farmers Railroad. The whole point in putting a railroad here in Stewartstown back in the 1870s and 1880s was that the closest railroad to get your goods to Baltimore, you know, the markets in Baltimore, would be the Northern Central. Well, the Northern Central is about, 7-8 miles from here. By wagon, that would take a long time to get goods over there. If a railroad entered the scene, you could get your goods there in, an hour and a half. It was actually the farmers of the area that got together, put the money together to build the railroad, and that is part of the reason why the railroad was able to survive as long as it did. Because the intent when the railroad was built was not as a money-making venture. Of course, if you make money, that's great, but the whole goal of it was just a convenience to the people that operated it. The farmers that owned it would be able to put their goods on it and have their goods shipped to market much faster than previously. And again, because the ownership was always people around here, even in times where financially, it wasn't making too much money, if it was making any money at all, there was still a reason to operate it. And that preserved the railroad long enough for it to become, apparent that, hey, this is actually worth preserving for its historical value. The fact that, again, it wasn't built to turn a profit helped it, in the end, be preserved to what it is now. Of course, the biggest difference today, we are still the same railroad company. We are still owned by a series of stockholders, and we still have a board of directors. The biggest difference now is that there aren't any paid employees. So there's the Stewartstown Railroad, which is the company, and then there's the Friends of the Stewartstown Railroad, which is the not-profit side of things, which has all the volunteers. So everybody who helps out here is volunteers. We don't pay anybody to, restore the coach or work on the track or anything like that. It's an all-volunteer organization. We still have the company aspect of it because the railroad itself has a right-of-way to operate, and that right-of-way is given to the company itself. We can't exactly turn the company into a not-for-profit because then we'd have to give up the right-of-way, which we wouldn't want to do. I'm seeing this car years ago where I walked in and there's all sorts of holes in the ceiling and holes in the floor and it's rusted and everything, and today it's bright and shiny. Of course, a lot of our cars are what we like to call a rolling restoration, which is it's perfectly safe to operate and ride, but it's not exactly what it would have looked like when it rolled off the assembly line in 1920. We're working towards it.
Is it true that these train cars, I believe that they would have carried soldiers back in the day, right, around here?
So
some of these cars?
I don't know for certain about 1158. I do know that the one that we're that's next on the restoration list, number 1341, that was actually a troop carrier during the Second World War.
Wow, very neat.
And one of the things that can't really tell now because the lettering's faded, but one of the things that we do when we paint that car is we put a line underneath the number. Mm-hmm. And the reason behind that is during the Second World War, the U.S. government or the U.S. Railroad Administration, I'm not sure exactly who it was that decided this, but to make it easier to determine what cars were assigned for troop transport and which ones weren't, the ones that were troop transport cars, they paint a line underneath the number. So that if somebody, you had a bunch of passenger cars and you're trying to figure out which one's the troop carrier, okay, the one with the line underneath the number is the troop carrier. That car, whenever we paint the number on it, gets the line underneath. Whereas 1158, we don't have any record that this was a troop carrier, so it'll just say 1158, whereas 1341 will have that line underneath.
Gotcha. And so how many cars do we have here? We have 1158, we have the one that used to be the troop carrier, and then I guess we have, a handful more, right? We have some open cars.
Yes, so there's an open car over there. The blue caboose is over here. The blue caboose is the youngest member of our fleet. It was built in, I believe, 1967. And it was built for the Union Pacific Railroad out west. And it kind of looks a little out of place on the East Coast because it's got such a high cupola. I don't know if any of the other cabooses are in the yard today, but most East Coast cabooses are much shorter than the ones on the West Coast because tunnels on the East Coast were built earlier than those on the West Coast, so they typically had lower clearances.
Okay.
So luckily we don't have any tunnels, so we don't have to worry about having a high cupola like that, but that's why that type of cupola is not too
common on the East Coast.
Not too common on the East Coast. This is a little toasty. So this is coach 1158. Of our coaches, this is one of the more technologically advanced because it has these fans in here. This was built for the Reading Railroad. It was built in the early 1920s. Yes, these chairs. And what's nice for, you know, excursion trains nowadays is if you have a party of 4, they can face each other.
So can you tell me about your background, how you got into this?
I grew up a little ways over in Fawn Grove. So I had seen this railroad when I was little. I was actually, when the railroad initially shut down in 2004, I say shut down, when it stopped hosting train rides, I was on one of the last Easter egg hunt trains that they had that year. Growing up in the area, I was always just familiar with, you know, the trains rusting off to the side and, you know, nothing really going on with the tracks. Unbeknownst to me, there was, you know, the Friends of the Stewartstown Railroad was doing a lot of work kind of behind the scenes and stuff that I didn't really see just because I was, you know, going to school at the time and such. So about when I was 16, I started helping out here on various things. We had a Christmas train where we actually had, like, I played Nebraska Quintet on the on the train.
Yeah.
So started helping out doing things such as like flagging or just, you know, general car host. I became very interested in the train station. That was the majority and still is the majority of what I do, is helping out inside the train station as the station master. But yeah, I've had a love of trains my entire life that I got from my parents and grandparents, and you know, seeing that I could help out something local like this is, you know, amazing.
My 6th year here. I'm a retired educator, and my dad worked for Southern Railway, so I've always loved trains. I started, you know, just as a volunteer. What can I do? And I was a brakeman trainee, and now I'm a qualified engineer, conductor, and brakeman, the volunteer coordinator, and I'm the operations director. And don't be too impressed. I'm also the guy that takes out the trash, and I mowed the grass today. So we do a lot of things here. For today's train, the way the railroad works is the conductor is responsible for the entire train, crew, and passengers. That's his job. He's called the boss, the skipper, the bird. There are different nicknames for the conductor. The engineer, of course, is responsible for the safety of the train, and he operates the locomotive to move the train. Brakeman is responsible, that's my job today. The brakeman is responsible for performing with the engineer the terminal brake test to make sure that we do indeed have brakes, because people like to go, but eventually they like to stop. So it's good to have brakes.
Yes.
But all kidding aside, that's obviously critical. We can't leave the station until we've passed what we call a terminal brake test, which means we're in the terminal. So we can't leave until we've passed the test. Phases to that: we connect the train, we make sure we don't have any air leaks that are unacceptable, and then we actually test the brakes. We reduce the air in the brakes, which makes the shoes touch the wheels, and trying to keep it simple. It's all done by air. We release the brakes because we don't want brakes to stick. We also have a fireman who's also a brakeman trainee today. We're teaching him the different jobs. For a brakeman, for example, I'm responsible for the cars and the brakes. So I have to check it literally from the rail up, inside, outside, make sure everything's safe. We also do flagging at crossings. You'll see us get on and off. Under our rules, we have to what's called ground flag, which means crew gets off the train and we stop vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Unlike the class 1s that have gates that come down and bells and red lights, we don't have that. So we have to flag it on the ground ourselves. That's our rule. On this trip, do you want to ride in the cab?
I'd love to.
All right.
Great train to take the family out on a ride.
It sucks in air from the environment through the intake. Then it goes through the air compressor and it's put into tanks. We have different tanks. We have a main tank, we have an auxiliary tank, and we have an emergency tank. The main tank supplies the air for the whole train once we've connected everything. So as I'm sure you saw with Doug operating, when he removes some air, we have 90 in the brake pipe, if he removes some air, putting on brakes, say down 5, that starts the process of getting the brakes to start touching the shoes, to touch the wheels. But there's a lot of stuff in between.
Gotcha.
So one thing about being an engineer is you have to stay ahead of your train. Because it's not like a car where, you know, put on your foot and it starts braking right away. Even on a train this short, it still takes time for the air to go and be released from down there.
Yep.
And there's only 3 cars.
Right.
Tom operated trains with 80 cars. So one of the really smart things of railroading is the air tanks are replenished automatically. We don't have to do that. If humans had to remember, I got to put in more air, we'd already wrecked.
All of the workers here are volunteers. No one here is getting paid. They all just love the history and just want to carry on the tradition of running the railroad and just so knowledgeable. It's a really neat experience. It's a wonderful operation, a ton of history. Everybody here is so kind, very knowledgeable. I highly recommend checking this place out. Bring the family, take a ride on the train, learn something. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to learn more about York and Adams counties, make sure you follow the page, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care.